This is Bazaar Morning Call, broadcasting live from the CNBC-TV18 Motilal Oswal studios in Mumbai.
Good morning. You're with us here on a fresh new edition of Bazaar Morning Call. It's a Friday morning. We're all maybe a little sleep deprived, but not too much. But happy. We're, of course, coming to you live from the CNBC-TV18 News studios. I'm Prashant, with me, my colleague Surabhi and Nigel. Guys, hi, morning.
Good morning, guys. And compliments to both of you. Both of you kept me great company throughout what was a fantastic evening at the India Business Leader Awards. So much excitement, so much energy, lots of people networking, and, of course, celebrating the winners.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, indeed, it was a great evening. You had people from all walks of life, whether it was political, industrialists, and it had something for everyone, right?
Yeah.
Whether it was with regard to their journey or a couple of takeaways as well. Spend more time with family as you're growing up as well. So I think that as well did hit me. So.
And take your people along with you, Mr. T.V. Narendran. Some fantastic thoughts.
It's time for me to give
through.
back to, So
I mean, people from all walks of life, right? Sports. I mean, Mr. Azim Premji was there. I've not
Yes.
seen him at an event in a
I don't know how
long
many
time.
years,
I mean,
yeah.
He doesn't talk to the media anymore, but he was there and
Yes.
he did share a lot of stuff. So we'll, of course, play out snippets as the day goes along. But the markets, right? That's the subject at hand. So let's start there. And, the point is that tomorrow is the big Q. Once again, which is the Karnataka election results. I'm going to preface everything else with this right on top because I think that is what's going to play on the market's mind. The exit polls are in. As I said, if the final result tomorrow is dramatically different as compared to what the exit polls show, maybe on Monday you get a bit of a reaction. It may, in any case, keep things quiet. It's an important state. It's a large state election, and this is kind of kicking off the political cycle all the way into 24. So it kind of focuses the mind in that direction. In any case, I mean, it's not as if global cues are sparkling, right? Global cues are very subdued. You had the US session, which was down. The S&P was down about 0.17%. Data was soft, both the producer price index number and the initial jobless claims. So PPI softened more and initial claims rose more than expected. And it basically shows some weakness, economic weakness. This, of course, after the labor market data, which was, I mean, it was kind of mixed, not really clear one way or the other. The regional bank troubles continue in the US. So you had one large regional bank saying that they lost some 9.5% of their deposits in, 1 week. The week ended 5th of May. So that is keeping things on the boil on that front. Many have said, well, that's the thing to focus on to determine whether the US will see a hard landing, a soft landing, or no landing at all. Now, the price action was interesting. The 2-year slumped. It hit 3.8%. That's a psychologically important support. And then it kind of moved back up a little bit to near 3.9%. The dollar index rose. I mean, data was not supportive for a rise in the dollar, but I think this is positioning led. We are back above the 102 on the dollar index. Out of China, data has been weak, and many are kind of focusing on that to say that the Chinese recovery comes into question because of the very low inflation numbers and, of course, the credit data as well. Copper futures. So yesterday, for example, metal stocks like Hindalco, etc., sold off. Overnight, copper futures have hit a new 2023 low. So we'll talk more about this and the implications here on. Important for the metals complex here in India. Now, let's just come to the levels, which are not very different because the market's not done very much. So the levels stay intact on the Nifty and the Bank Nifty on the upside and downside. Resistance for the Nifty comes in at about 18,450. That is a 78.6% retracement of the entire fall. And on the way down, there is a steep rising channel. The lower end of the channel is at about 18,200. It's not very far from where we are. 18,195 to be precise is the point where it meets the lower end of the channel. The Bank Nifty, and we were talking about this intermarket divergence where the Nifty is making higher highs, the Bank Nifty is not. Yesterday, it attempted to do it. It bounced intraday above the previous high last Thursday, 43,740, but then failed to close above it. So that becomes the immediate kind of level to take out on the upside. On the way down, supports for the Bank Nifty come in at the 20-day moving average, 42,772, and the low, last Friday's low when the market sold off was 42,582. So enough and more to keep markets kind of focused in that sense. But I want to kind of end with what I began with, election results, state election results tomorrow. Indices have shown the tendency to be a little quiet last couple of days. I think that may continue. But that doesn't prevent stocks from flying, right? I mean, we've seen that yesterday. We've seen that over the last couple of days. Mid caps, small caps. I mean, the energy, the action, it's all there. So do we.
Oh, well, absolutely, Prashant. Politics, right? Sometimes it just ends up becoming one of the biggest cues for the market. You can never write it off.
Yeah.
Speaking of politics, just to add to what you said on the US, this whole business around the debt ceiling, we've not actually discussed it at all because it's something that we've come to expect year after year. It's the same sort of, if I could use the term, drama that plays out. But I just wanted to add the quote on the voices on the street on this one, because Mr. Jamie Dimon now added to the chatter yesterday. He said that, as you get closer to the deadline, you will perhaps have some amount of panic setting in the market if this is not clarified. Just to point out, by the way, there was supposed to be a meeting today between President Joe Biden and a couple of these Congress leaders. Now, that's been postponed, not indefinitely. It's been postponed to next week, so it speaks. The producer price, of course, details Prashant mentioned. So that's another good news on the inflation front. But the politics front and debt ceiling, it's still confusing. You have a lot of high decibel chatter around it. For instance, Mr. Jamie Dimon yesterday coming out and saying that markets could perhaps panic and there could be more volatility if this is not sorted out quickly enough as you're getting closer to the deadline. Potential default, so to speak, could be around the 1st of June if they don't sort it out. But they typically always do it at the 11th hour. That's the market's expectation. Copper, as Prashant mentioned, prices at a 6-month low, and we saw that play out in the stocks, and we'll hear more from Nigel on this as well. This is all China. Remember the inflation numbers that came out of China, the sense of demand perhaps that's weighing down on this part of the market. FII's net buyers again yesterday, about 800 odd crores, 837 crores is what they've bought. Net. I think domestic institutions were net sellers to about 200 odd crores. Just the levels this week, I mean, look at for all the action, all the movement. This is how much? 35 points on the Nifty. That's all you've got from Monday's close to yesterday's close. So no follow-through from what we saw on Monday. And it's just been ambling along, at least at the index level. Quick, check on the earnings calendar. We didn't have too many big numbers after markets yesterday. But today it's a packed session. So, from the index, you will hear from some of the biggies like Tata Motors. There's DLF, there's Manappuram, Polycap, some interesting mid-caps as well that we'll look out for. IGL, and I put IOB in the end. Apart from earnings, want to see if now other banks beyond Canada start talking about this ECL provisioning. If there's any more chatter from PSU banks, that would be something interesting to track. But Nigel, I remember you saying this yesterday as well. You were saying that you're at these levels, markets had a decent run, maybe people want to take some money off the table. And I guess at least in terms of index positioning, we saw that. It was just a fair amount of caution that continued to play out.
Well, so it'd be always good to get a call right? Yesterday, I said that the markets are opening 40, 50 points higher. Won't hurt anyone. Take the money off the table, prepare yourself for a good weekend. And, I'm preparing myself for a good weekend. I'm taking my son for the IPL game today. Mumbai Indians take on Gujarat Titans, so I'm looking forward to that game. So cricket's on my mind. But keeping in that sort of a backdrop, it's a good time, I think, to just leave the ball. A ball well left, so as they call it.
That's also an art, right?
Yeah, instead of just smashing every ball. So I think today is that sort of a day, right? Though we're going to be starting off a little bit on the back foot. You have a big event over the weekend. You get the Karnataka election results. There's that chatter with regard to the debt ceiling. So why not just leave the ball and come back on Monday and, take fresh talk about how the pitch is panning out, how the conditions, and how many runs you need to put on the board. Stock focus, though, will continue. And yesterday we saw that. Though the Nifty ended a little bit lower, it was weekly expiry as well that played out. You had the mid-cap and the small-cap indices that returned in good style. So that was contrast to what we saw in the previous session. So stock focus will continue. Index could consolidate. Institutional flows, well, they're positive, mind you. The FI flows, though, they're tapering off a little bit in comparison to what we have seen for a 10-day average. So yesterday, yes, the FIs were buyers, but that was less than half the average that we see in the previous 10 sessions. Net institutions as well, that's the DI and the FI put those numbers together. They were buyers as well, but that was much lower if you compare that with the 10-day average. The FIs in the F&O market, well, they added some short position, close to around 8,000 contracts. I like that, mind you. I hope that they add more amount of short positions because if the flows are not going to support, then that will be one of those levers to push us higher. Short positioning now at around 52% odd. Moving to the options data, we have seen when the PCR moves to the upper end of the band, then in fact we see some bit of resistance that's creeping in there. And from around that 1 odd level, it's moved to around 1.3. It's getting closer to around that 1.4, which is the upper end of the band. Writing was seen at around that 18,300 call in yesterday's trading session, added close to around 30 lakh shares, premium out there around 116 rupees. So that's giving you the resistance level. Yesterday as well, we ran into resistance of around 18,350 to around 18,400. Near-term support will be around 18,150, 18,200, as I said yesterday as well. The Nifty Bank, that's been playing a very, very good knock. It's been in fine form, but how much more can it do from these levels? Yesterday, it went to around 43,800 odd, and from there, it saw some bit of resistance. It has that 52-week high on its mind. For the time being, though, we're close to around 600 points away from those levels. So the Nifty Bank could yet outperform, but how much more can it do? That's the question. SGX Nifty suggesting a bit of a pullback. I think today is one of those days where you sit out of the index, focus on individual stocks, and come back on Monday and take fresh stock.
All right. Broader markets are where all the action is, and if you're getting stocks there right, you're still making money. Before we go any further, let's quickly tell you what's lined up here in the first half hour of the show. We get you updates from markets across the globe. Arvind Sanger of Geosphere Capital Management will join in to discuss the trade setup, how he's seeing things. Our research team gets you the top 10 stocks of the day. Lots of earnings to tackle as well. At 8:30 this morning, Nishil Maheshwari of Centrum Broking comes in with his thoughts on markets.
Okay, so let's kick it off as always with the equity call of the morning. This one's coming in from Gautam Duggar of Motilal Oswal, who says the market has no big triggers left and may now remain in a range. He says the Nifty was up 7% since the start of April, while the small cap index is up 11%. So now, due to lack of any trigger, market could digest gains till any material trigger comes along. He says they haven't seen any major upgrades or downgrades from earnings this time. The top picks from the earnings season is the financial space along with autos. That includes names like ICICI Bank, SBI, Bank of Baroda and IndusInd Bank. Gautam says in autos, they like M&M and Tata Motors. He adds that they have downgraded Eicher Motors this morning despite good numbers due to the impending threat from Triumph's launch and also fair valuations for Eicher.
Okay, let's get you some money market views as well. We have Lakshmanan V of Federal Bank, who says the annual rate of inflation in the US fell for the 10th straight month to two-year lows of 4.9%. However, he says the US dollar strengthened across the board and pushed the rupee to a two-week low of 82.09 yesterday. He says the focus remains on today's domestic inflation print, expecting the USD INR pair to trade in a range of between 81.85 to 82.5 to a dollar for the next few trading days.
On bonds, Mr. Lakshmanan says with the Indian CPI data expected below 5%, the 10-year benchmark may soften below 7% from the current levels of 7.02%. He expects the continuous supply of government bonds and also future risk on inflation outlook due to fear of disruption in the monsoon will be an overhang on bonds, and rates may not sustain below 7% for long.
Well, we have a lot of stock-specific action to track for you, and we'll get to that in a wee bit from now in our special Top 10 segment. But we have a whole host of stocks: Kotak Mahindra Bank, Max Healthcare, HAL, Sona BLW Precision, Siemens, you have GSPL, Deepak Nitrite, Eicher Motors, Zensar Technologies. They are stocks on the back of positive news flow, while we have Indus Stars that will be reacting to negative news flow.
Okay, that's basically what's lined up here on the show. Well, Arvind Sanger is now joining us, Managing Partner at Geosphere Capital Management. Arvind, good to have you with us here. Thank you very much. The market here did come up very nicely over the last 1 month or so to very close to the previous highs. So the question is there enough in the tank to take the market meaningfully higher from here? Or you think, we kind of turned down from here a little bit, given what's going on? What's your sense?
Well, I think the global headwinds are going to be an issue for all markets. I think India is obviously in a much better situation in terms of macro risks. I know you were talking just about the Karnataka election, but I don't think that's a big deal. China has serious problems. We've been disappointed, and I think investors have been disappointed by how poor that rebound from COVID has been. US has several headwinds. Inflation has still not come down. Fed is still not, talking about pausing in a meaningful way, although they may pause for a month. And you have this debt ceiling. I was just looking at credit default swaps, which is the insurance against default. And US, it's more expensive to buy insurance against US defaulting on debt than it is to buy on default swaps from Mexico or Greece, which is a sick man of EU. So the fact that the US is flirting with that. So my long-winded answer to your question is, I think the global headwinds create risks for global markets, for risk off, but within that framework, India is probably one of the better places to be. But I don't think that one should assume that any markets will be sanguinely moving up if U.S. is going through the kind of dislocations that is seen right now. So I would say that discretion is a better part of valor right now. I'd be a little light in terms of risk in the current environment.
Arvind, hi. Good morning, or rather good evening to you. On this U.S. debt ceiling, I mean, I take your point, and that's a pretty interesting piece of data on the CDS, Mexico being cheaper than even the U.S. But surely this is not even a base case, or is it even within the realm of cues that we're tracking? We were just talking about this a while back. It's almost a yearly phenomenon. It plays itself out, a perfect script. Is it anything more than that? Should we be paying attention to what's happening when it comes to U.S. politics?
Well, I would say that, if you ask me today, I think there's a 90% probability that nothing will come off this. But the fact that we are talking about even a 10% probability of something like this happening is what is concerning, right? Because, you had President or former President Trump talked at a town hall meeting about the fact that if the Democrats don't agree to deficit reduction, then they should go ahead and let the U.S. default. You have enough people who are at the fringes in the Republican Party talking about that seriously, and the two sides are so far apart. And the X date, as they call it, is sometime. I don't think it's 1st June, although that's what Janet Yellen has told. But it could be sometime in mid-June. So I think we're kind of bumping against time. My expectation is still 9 out of 10 that we will, at worst, extend the ceiling for a while negotiations continue. But I think right now the mood in Washington and the craziness amongst the politicians and the big spread between the two parties is so large that I wouldn't, say it's a zero probability, and that's what's concerning.
All right, Arvind, before we let you go, what would you look to buy in India? I recall when you visited our studio, you were telling us that the power sector is looking up. I'll tell you what, Arvind, it's really hot here in Mumbai. Every morning, it's a bit of a task to get to work as well. With that aside, you were telling us that sector is looking up. I think Coal India was another stock that you all owned. Tech was something that you were staying away from. How have things changed? What are you bullish on now?
Well, I think that, in terms of Indian domestic capex, we like some of the private sector companies that benefit from growing, demand for grid build out, for electrification, for industrial capex. We like that sector. That's a sector that is of, quite significant interest to us. And then we like, some of the special situation companies across a variety of sectors. I think the financial sector, we still find opportunity in some NBFCs and banks which have not moved as much. And we like, some other consumer-facing sectors and the real estate, which is, I think hard assets should do well in an environment where, people are looking for safety. I think gold, which I don't have exposure to in India right now, but I am interested in, is something that I think has structural legs to it. And I think the gold side of the story is hugely underappreciated, in my opinion, by investors. Central bankers in the last 3 quarters have increased their buying of gold by 500% over prior periods. And that's because of the U.S. seizing Russian foreign currency reserves. So central banks around the world, led by China, are diversifying away from U.S. Treasuries. So I think that's an area to keep in mind in India too.
Okay, interesting themes and thoughts there. Arvind, before we let you go, I mean, we discussed the politics of it. We're also coming off the earnings season. I think in India, at least at an index level, no one's any wiser about which way the market wants to head. So let me ask you about the mothership, the U.S. market. I mean, politics aside, what sense do you have? Will the market have a clear directional move? What are earnings saying? Yes, big tech has been good. But any sense of, in which direction the mothership could head in the near future?
Well, in addition to the political risks, I think the economic clouds are still around. And I think the possibility of a recession because of tightening credit conditions, because of the banking sector crisis with the regional banks and other factors caused us to be very cautious about the earnings outlook, certainly for the second half and maybe even for the second quarter. And therefore, I do not see the U.S. market being anything but range bound. And right now, at the high end of its trading range, and probably 3,800 S&P is kind of where we would look to get maybe more interest in the market.
All right. Thanks very much, Arvind, for joining us. It's great speaking with you. On the debt ceiling, right? I mean, there's an old saying that Americans eventually do the right thing after they've exhausted all the other possibilities, right? So, and we'll see if that is true this time around as well. It is every year.
I hope they don't go too far. Yeah, I hope they don't go too far in exploring the wrong options.
I read somewhere, and I think it's true, that they actually were considering a provision to mint a coin, a $1 trillion coin, which would solve all problems. I mean, so this is make-believe world. But of course, I mean, lots of debate around that, but we'll do that another time. Thank you very much once again. Appreciate it very much here on the program. We'll slip into a quick break. We'll leave you with highlights from CNBC-TV18's India Business Awards held in Mumbai last evening, where we honored and spoke with the very best of Indian leaders. Listen in.
The Brand Campaign of the Year Award to Dove's Young Turk Startup of the Year Award to Skyroot. The Disruptor of the Year Award to Idea Forge. The Special Recognition Award for Social Impact Icon to the late Ela Bhatt. The Outstanding Contribution to Brand India Award to Philip Asway. The Sports Leader of the Year Award to World Champion Nikhat Zarif. Game Changer of the Year Award to the Board of Control for Cricket in India, BCCI. Entertainment Leader of the Year Award to Alia Bhatt. The Lifetime Achievement Award to Venu Srinivas. The Hall of Fame 2022 Award to Azim Premji.
What will really drive us into the next sphere is a belief in ourselves, in terms of what we can achieve as a country and what we can achieve as a nation.
Outstanding Company of the Year Award to Infosys. The Outstanding Business Leader of the Year Award to TV Narendra.
I think we want to leave behind an organization which is culturally, structurally, and financially future ready.
Well, it's Friday, the spirits are high, and we're looking to bring this down to individual stocks that you need to track today. And for that, our entire team is standing by with a CNBC-TV18 list of top stocks to watch this morning. Hi, guys. Good morning to you, and welcome back to Vivek. Let's start off with a lot of the names. In fact, Vivek, since you've come back, and I hope you've recovered well, you're off the block first, tracking some of the MSCI changes.
Well, absolutely. Thanks. So, most of the changes that were expected from the MSCI have come largely in line with what the analyst community was anticipating. A couple of surprises. So first on our list, is Max Healthcare, expected by a few analysts on the street. Nuvama estimates that the likely inflows in this particular name will come in at $295 million. All of the changes that we are talking about are changes and are inclusions that will come into the MSCI Standard Index, the index that has the most weightage. The other one is Sona BLW Precision. Now, this particular stock will see inflows of close to $175 million. Now, this is a positive surprise. None of the analysts actually had this particular name on their list as a likely inclusion candidate. So, expect some, large moves in this particular name. Hindustan Aeronautics, a largely anticipated candidate, expect moves of close to $195 million. Industar is going to be excluded from the index. And lastly, Kotak Mahindra Bank, worth highlighting, a large weight up here. Expected lines, inflows of close to $810 million. And all of these inflows and outflows are estimates of Nuvama Institutional Equities.
All right. Thanks very much, Vivek. And these are stocks we will watch out for carefully. Now, Eicher Motors reported numbers. Rima is here to run us through the details. Rima, hi, morning.
Hi, morning. So strong numbers from Eicher Motors ahead of street expectations. Revenue growth 19% on a year-on-year basis. EBITDA margins at a fresh record high, expanding by 80 basis points to 24.5%, and this drove a 48.5% jump in the profitability. Royal Enfield has reported record high volumes in FY23. Jefferies says despite the ongoing two-wheeler slowdown, Eicher Motors has delivered the highest Royal Enfield volumes and EPS in FY23, which is why they have a buy call. Morgan Stanley believes there is a valuation headroom for Eicher Motors because the stock is trading at 23 times forward multiple, which is below its 10-year average of 27 times. But rising competition from global brands like Triumph and Harley keeps them equal weight on the stock. Back to you.
All right, thanks a lot for that, Rima. So we'll keep an eye out on Eicher Motors. But Vivek, you're the busy man. Siemens came out with a set of numbers. How are they?
Well, exceptionally strong quarter from Siemens this time around, along expected lines given what its peers had announced earlier. But just have a look at the numbers. It's a clean beat across all parameters to our own poll. Revenues higher by 28%, EBITDA up almost 32.5%, margins coming in very strong at 12.8%, and profitability up almost 38.7%. Now, some more key numbers we look out for. The new ordering as far as Q4 is concerned is around 31,151 crore. Now, remember, this particular ordering activity involves the company booking in the order of the locomotive that they had announced in December. So 24,500 crore of order book actually coming in from that particular locomotive order itself. Core order inflow, up in high single digits at around 5,700 crore. Strong beat. Expect some green on the stock today.
Got that, Vivek. That's interesting. Of course, different companies, but at least Siemens hasn't shown the kind of margin issues that plagued L&T. And remember what happened yesterday with the stock. Okay, let's move on, and we have some more earnings to track. Sonal, you're looking at a couple of them?
Yes, let me start with GSPL, which was a good set, largely in line with what the street was working with. Revenues were up 10%, EBITDA was up 9.2%, margins declined, but that is because of the beat that we saw on EBITDA this time around. Net profit was up 31.2% to come in at 224 crore rupees, and PAT growth this time around was driven by higher other income as well, and that's why the profit growth is higher than EBITDA and revenue growth as well. Transmission volumes absolutely in line with estimates came in at 25.1 MMSCMD. Deepak Nitrite, again, numbers were largely in line with Motilal Oswal estimates. Revenues up 5%. We had EBITDA declining by 15.2%. Margins also declined 400 basis points, but there's an expectation that margins will recover from here on. Profits were down 12.5%. Now, revenues also include a one-time government incentive to the tune of 17 crore rupees. Adjusting for that, margins will be around 17%. In terms of segments, advanced intermediates, that was the one which saw some pressure, where margins declined almost 1,000 basis points. And phenolics, that was the one which saw some sequential recovery. So 15.1% versus 15% is what the margins were this time around. So the stock will be in focus today.
Okay, all right. Thanks a lot for that, Sonal. Well, Rima, back to you. Zensar Tech, the numbers look good.
Yes, it's a pretty decent quarter. Zensar Tech for the last 2 quarters, that's Q2 and Q3, was reporting a revenue decline. Finally, things have turned around, and the company's reported a dollar revenue growth of 1.1%, constant currency revenue growth of 0.4%, sharp margin expansion of more than 300 basis points to 14.5%. Profits have gone up 55% on a quarter-on-quarter basis, and the cash in the books is more than $200 million, which is about 23% of the company's market capitalization. So considering that after 2 quarters of a revenue decline, the company's clocked in a growth, I'm going to go with green for this one. Back to you.
All right, so there we have it. That's Zensar. Thanks very much, Rima, and the rest of the team as well. Let's quickly recap our list of stocks to watch today. The ones that have positive news around them are Kotak Mahindra Bank, Max Healthcare, HAL, that's Hindustan Aeronautics, Sona BLW Precision. These are, of course, on the index changes, the MSCI changes, which are expected. Siemens, JSPL, Deepak Nitrite, Eicher Motors, and Zensar, all of them on the back of positive earnings. Stocks that have negative news around them, Indus Tower. Okay, so from equities, now let's look at what's happening in the world of commodities. We have Manisha Gupta joining in with all the action as always. Manisha, good morning.
Morning, Surbhi. Thank you for that. I'll start with crude oil prices, which is headed for a marginal positive in this week. I mean, we did see buying from the lower side, but it hasn't been able to hold above $75 a barrel for the crude prices there. Well, the decline in inventories for gasoline, distillate, jet fuel clearly has been supportive. And then markets will watch out on what U.S. does with its strategic petroleum reserve. That should be out in the next week as well. But a big profit taking is what we are dealing with in metal space. Silver prices, for one, fell by 5% overnight, and we have most of the base metal prices also trading at multi-month lows. Copper is at a 4-month lows, aluminum at 7-month lows with the kind of decline that we saw overnight, and zinc prices now are trading at a 26-month lows to trade at.
Okay, all right. Well, Manisha, thanks very much. So, yeah, commodities seem to be under pressure. We'll discuss some of this with Nishil Maheshwari of Centrum Broking as well, who is going to be coming up on the other side of this quick commercial break. Stay with us.
We don't just make new categories. We remake legends. In fact, we make the whole world of India's mobility new forever.
I am slow. I'm a tortoise. But your wealth managers, they shouldn't be as slow. You know?
Choose Nuvama. We move at the right pace because we only do what's right for you and your money. Nuvama. Let's do it right.
Z-Black Premium Agarbatti and Dhoop, official prayer partner, Delhi Capitals.
कैसे करते हैं ट्रेड? Try 5 पैसा. Powerful charts and research tool. One-click trade is the new cool. Get access to live market data. Margin funding भी है रे बेटा. 5 पैसा app करो install. Trading made simple, simple for all. With 5 पैसा's wide range of products. यहाँ वहाँ चाहे हो जहाँ. Simply trade on the go. ऐसे करते हैं trade. सोच मत छोटे, install मार. Investment in securities market are subject to market risk. Read all related documents carefully before investing. Hey, buddy.
Hope you liked them. Introducing Apollo Alpha. Add more thrill to your beast.
Welcome back. Hope you're having a good Friday morning. Well, one day to go before you get into that weekend, but a lot of stocks in focus as we ran you through the list. Nishil Maheshwari, CEO Institutional Equities and Advisory at Centrum Broking, joins us on the show. Hi, Nishil. Good morning. Well, let's talk about a couple of stocks then. In terms of result reactions, Eicher Motors, the numbers look good. I believe they're taking a price increase as well in the month of May. But how much of it is in the price? Do you think it's good for more?
Morning, Nigel. I think good set of results, basically. I think more than what market was expecting. If you look at it, I think some of the reaction is already there in the stock. But I do believe, basically, there is an upside from here onwards also. And we continue to believe, basically, this is a good stock to keep on adding at every fall in the market.
Okay. And Nishil, hi, good morning. The entire commodities pack seems to be weakening. So copper has hit a new year-to-date low. Manisha was also just telling us aluminum, for example, is weak. Oil, of course, is where it is. By the way, the Bloomberg Commodities Index is at a new low as well. So it's broad-based weakness which is starting to come over. What do you make of it? And what are the implications for markets? Implications for the economy may be very different because of terms of trade for importers turning favorable. But for markets, what does this mean? Your sense?
Morning, Prashant. I think this is expected as per expectation, not very different basically, because if you are expecting that interest rates going to be higher for longer and possibly another interest rate hike in June by Fed, and possibly recession by the September quarter, I think all commodities demand being weak across the world and both the consuming bowels, whether it is Europe or US, you are expecting all these commodities to be weaker only. And I think they are behaving that same way. As far as India is concerned, fortunately for us, we are a consuming nation. Basically, we are not a producing nation for most of these commodities. So, I stand corrected. Basically, we are producing, but we are a big importer also of most of these commodities. So, I think it is good for India as far as this thing is concerned. As far as market is concerned, I don't think commodities. India is a commodity-heavy index. Basically, if you look at it, steel is around 3.5% on the Nifty. Oil is another 4 or 5%. If you look at Reliance, basically, which is the major weight there, basically, in case of oil and gas, and that's a refining company. It's very little upstream. So not much of an impact as far as the stock markets are concerned, as far as commodities weakening is there.
Okay, speaking of weakening, I was just looking at some of the Asian markets, and it's a pretty downbeat picture across our neighborhood, across the region. Hong Kong, China, Singapore's down 1%. So the mood is fairly somber, you'd have to say, this Friday across regional markets, and therefore the SGX Nifty is looking at a 70-point dip to begin with. That's what I'm talking about. The colors are very clearly red, at least as we get into the opening, and that's the SGX for you, looking at about a 0.5% decrease. Well, Nishil, stay on. We have more questions for you. But before we get to it, let's also bring our viewers all the highlights from the India Business Leader Awards, the ceremony that happened yesterday. Infosys was conferred the Outstanding Company of the Year award at the India Business Leader Awards last evening. From the sidelines, my colleague Rima caught up with the company's MD and CEO, Salil Parekh, and she asked him what the company's big focus is going to be in the new financial year.
The focus is, as we look ahead, there's enormous attention on generative AI. There's a lot of work going on automation, on cost, on efficiency with clients. So we'll continue to focus on that. And today, I'm really delighted to be here at your award function.
No, we're very delighted, and congratulations on the award as well. But can you talk a bit about generative AI, the top 3 ways how this is going to change Indian IT? Perhaps in terms of jobs, democratizing it, maybe in terms of productivity, passing on benefits, the way you see generative AI impacting Indian technology. Top 3 things.
So generative AI, there are multiple ways it will make an impact. One, there are open source generative AI platforms. We are working with 2 of them where we are putting all of our software development tools onto the platform, which then creates further efficiency and benefits for our developers. So that's a huge impact we'll start to see in productivity. Another way is when we work with clients where they're using generative AI, whether they're using open source or other platforms, to make improvements within their portfolio and environment. So for us, generative AI is a very critical technology which will start to make an impact. We've been fortunate. We've been working with generative AI for about 2.5 years on the open source platforms.
And you see a big boost to productivity on account of this?
We are already seeing an impact on productivity. The way to look at it is how broadly can these tools be used in development. So the more standardized either the client environment is or our environment is, the simpler the way to use this tool and the more impact you can have.
How many of your employees are currently trained on generative AI to use those prompts?
So it's not a question of training on generative AI, it's the open source platform that we have to feed with this large language model. Once that, training of that model is complete, then you start to use it because the tools are what we are already using for development. That's how the benefit will come.
And when do you think we will be able to have a large scale across the enterprise kind of an impact? Is it 2 years? Is it 3 years down the line? Or can it happen even earlier?
So the impact, I mean, for us, we are starting to see the impact on many development programs, and more will come, as each quarter, each year progresses. So there's not like one milestone where everything will suddenly shift, but it's a incremental impact.
Will we see job losses on account of generative AI?
In fact, we think we will see, like all technologies, more people who will be engaged in these things, because the spectrum of what is addressable expands when you use generative AI. So typically you see more and more impact on that.
At the lower end, can we see job losses?
There again, our experience from the past is any automation, you sort of enable more areas to have focus on, and we'll see more growth.
So complementary. Just one more question. Now, in your avatar as Infosys and even prior, you've seen many technology cycles. How would you rate the current cycle that we're in?
So all tech cycles have an element of disruption and have an element of continuity. What we see with large enterprises is many previous technologies still exist and the new technologies integrate. So typically that's the approach we see with large enterprises.
No, and in terms of a slowdown?
There it depends on how the economic environment will develop. We'll see how it plays out.
Early days then, to call it, if this is going to be a deep entrenched slowdown, or is it going to be a...
Yeah, so we will see how the various factors, whether it's in Europe or in the US environment, what the economic impacts are.
All right, so that is Mr. Salil Parekh, Infosys, winning the Outstanding Company of the Year award. Let's get back to a market conversation with Nishil. Nishil, so those were some of the sort of big picture themes that Rima was discussing with Mr. Salil Parekh. But, back to the here and now, and we know that Infosys itself, it's had some of the bigger dislocations, quicker dislocations in Q4. But you're getting the stock at perhaps, bargain basement prices. But I don't know, would you sort of nibble in now, or would you just stand aside and wait for more clarity?
So, morning, Surabhi. I think a couple of things as far as Indian IT is concerned. One is obviously we have a global slowdown happening, and that's why you would be a bit cautious. But I think what even Salil is talking about, generative AI. Now, I think I do not have much understanding of the whole thing, but what I understand is basically this could be disruptive for the services industry of India. Because here we are talking about some of these companies setting up tools to actually do coding, which is the basic thing which most of the Indian companies do, basically. So we have to see how all these new technologies are going to play out and what is going to be the impact, longer term impact on the Indian industry. So one should wait and watch out, basically. But I think in the short term, I think it's still an avoid at the moment.
All right, Nishil, request you to stay with us. We have lots more to ask you. For the time being, though, we'll slip into a short break. On the other side, our technical experts, Mitesh Thakkar, as well as Shrikant Chavan, will be joining in. You stay tuned for that.
We don't just design new cars. We create new ways to design all cars. In fact, we make the whole world of India's mobility new forever.
Is your strategy ambitious enough to drive transformation at scale? How can you design and deliver a strategy fit for the real world? Are you reframing your future, or is the future reframing you? Realize your transformation with connected strategy, transactions, and technology. Reframe your future with EY.
चीज़ डोसा मसाला डोसा पेपर सादा डोसा रोटी बटर नान कुलचा वेज कढ़ी वेज कोला स्टीम राइस जीरा राइस फ्राइड राइस
भैया और कोई ऑप्शन?
लाइफ में और कहीं ऑप्शंस मिले ना मिले, मोतीलाल ओसवाल आपको देता है ऑप्शंस ट्रेडिंग में ऑप्शंस। इंट्रोड्यूसिंग मोतीलाल ओसवाल ऑप्शन स्टोर विद अ वाइड रेंज ऑफ ऑप्शंस इन ऑप्शंस ट्रेडिंग। एक्सप्लोर करो ऑप्शन स्टोर। Investment in securities market is subject to market risks. Read all the related documents carefully before investing.
What if buildings could tell you how they could be more efficient?
I'm listening.
Well, with IBM, you can use software to help you connect and analyze data from heating and cooling to elevators to lights.
What if we use AI-driven insights to pinpoint inefficiency?
Yep, and act on it. Saving energy, money.
And emissions.
Yep, that's a big one. Now you've built something better for everyone. That's the sustainability solution IBM and a global real estate company created. What will you create? IBM, let's create.
Okay, welcome back. You're with us here at Bazaar Morning Call. The SGX Nifty should come up on your screen. It was indicating a cut of 60 points. It's right there. 63 points lower is what we have. Anuj is here with what he's making of things. Anuj, morning.
Morning, Prashant, Surbhi, Nigel. Mood is positive and, generally, especially after last evening, you do feel positive about things. And for the market also, my sense is that this gap down could get bought. It's, of course, testing the patience of the bulls close to new highs. But look at what this week has done. This week has been good. Most of the big indices are up 1 to 2%. Nifty, Bank Nifty, IT, Midcap, all of them. Barring a PSU, Nifty PSU Bank Index, which, of course, had its own share of news, negative news, which is down 4.5%. Everything else is up quite a bit. Autos, 3.5% gains. Private banks, 2.7%. Financial services, 2%. The Nifty Midcap Index just 1% away from all-time high. So for all practical purposes, we are there. And of course, numbers continue to be quite strong. If you look at the domestic numbers, whether it's Eicher Motors or Siemens or even the Asian Paints numbers, which came in the last hour of trade yesterday, the kind of volume numbers, I think things look good. On the index, there are two support zones. First is 18,200 to 250, and the bigger support zone is 18,100 to 18,150. The resistance comes in at 18,300 to 350, which is where the Nifty has been failing, and 18,350 to 18,400. I think the index to watch again would be Bank Nifty, because that's the one which has been showing some effort to get out of this congestion zone, but very close to all-time high. It's not able to take that out, and those are the numbers that I'm watching out for. The big support comes in at 42,800 to 42,900, but let's see. The texture has been buy on dips, so let's see if that is respected or not.
Okay, all right. Thanks a lot for that, Anuj. Well, Nishil Maheshwari is still with us. Nishil, a couple of stocks. Mankind Pharma had a blockbuster listing. Yesterday, there was some news with regard to an IT raid, and the stock corrected a little bit. We also had Dr. Reddy's that was under pressure post its numbers. Your view on Pharma and specifically on any of these two stocks?
So, Mankind, obviously, we do not have a coverage as yet. It just got listed, basically, and we are not one of the bankers. So, I have got limited view as far as Mankind is concerned. But Dr. Reddy's, I think, basically, decent set of numbers. I think there was some amount of profit taking is what I would see, because I don't see any issue as far as the numbers were concerned. So I think if there is a further down from the current prices, one should be looking to buy it. Pharma as a whole, I think definitely on a path of recovery, whether it is the US business or whether it is a domestic business. Definitely, we are positive as far as Pharma is concerned, and we are recommending a client should be now overweight on Pharma.
Overweight on Pharma, that's interesting. Nishil, so just a follow-up, what about Dr. Reddy's? Huge slam dunk on the stock yesterday, and I think the market's trying to figure out whether that's a sort of a symbolic look ahead for the US market in general, because it is the US market business where the disappointment came in for Reddy's.
I agree with you, Surbhi. There was some disappointment as far as the US market is concerned, but what our channel checks and talkings with various other companies basically give us that the bottoming of the generic prices, US generics, are now more or less in place. So that's why we are feeling more confident, and we believe basically this downturn in Dr. Reddy's should be bought into.
Okay, what I'm going to do now, Nishil, is read out a long list. I mean, the action in mid-caps and broader markets is so large, right? So just take your pick. I mean, if something strikes a chord. Just yesterday, right, Newland Laboratories, we were talking about Pharma. Ratnamani, some of them are reacting to earnings. CET saw very large moves. You know, Greaves Cotton came back with force. Teamlease was up 10%. So we should have these up. Ratnamani, CET, Teamlease. KEI continues to be such a big winner. TCI, that is Transport Corporation of India. SBI Card, the Adani Group stocks came back into action. Sanofi was a big winner. And this is what I'm talking about. I mean, the Nifty and the Bank Nifty are what they are, and all week through they've not done very much. It's very small moves, but broader markets are doing very well. Anything strikes a chord, Nishil? Any of these names?
So I think we have very few stocks under coverage from this list, basically, but KEI is one of them. Yes, the numbers seem to be pretty good, basically, unlike the sector doing. But I think KEI is big on wires, and that's why it continues to do pretty well. The stock was cheap, and that's why we're seeing this kind of a huge outperformance over the last 1 year. I think now it is fairly priced, and one can look at booking away some profits from the stock at the moment. Other stock, what stands out, I think mostly they are outcome of MSCI rebalancing or results. So Adani Group or SBI Cards, I think quite a few of them is the MSCI rebalancing, which has been announced yesterday, and I think others are more reactions to their quarterlies.
Okay, all right. Nishil, stay with us. We have our technical experts with us as well. Maybe they have a view on some of these names, or they're part of their trades. Mitesh and Srikanth are with us to run us through what to do as we start another session. Gentlemen, good morning. Good to have both of you here. Mitesh, to you first. The SGX is indicating a 50-60 point dip. What do you do, if anything at all? Write it open. And what's the setup looking to you?
Morning, Prashant. This setup looks like, the market is most possibly getting into some kind of consolidation. I think we had this view from 18,250, though I think we made a higher high at 18,350. But last few days and the options data indicate that 18,350 is a important pivot in the short term. And therefore, I think it could be a range of about 18,350 to about 18,150. Overall, I think broadly it remains an uptrending market, but a market which is slightly overbought. We've seen a rally happen, and then we are now seeing signs of some tiring down, which could lead to consolidation and a mild pullback. So the idea is on the index, trade long on declines. I think declines to about 18,200, 18,150. That's the zone I would want to buy into. But on stock specific basis, I think we are trading with more of long buys, though today it's just a mixed set of calls. But I think broadly, wait for the index to come down. Alternatively, the Bank Nifty, if it starts getting past 44,000, that could be a breakout, and that could give strength. But given the fact that Bank Nifty also had a rally and it's close to the previous highs, I think a chance of a pullback are much stronger. So I've been maintaining a consolidative, a sideways kind of a view, and I think that remains in force.
Okay, got that, Mitesh. Stay on. Srikanth is also with us. Srikanth, good morning. So how are you approaching things? Index totally flat. Do you suggest any trades, Nifty or Bank Nifty?
Good morning, Surbi. Yeah, I think, the markets are very clearly in the range. They are not. It is like finding a lot of difficulties to cross the level of 18,350. But certainly on the dismissal of 18,350, we can expect 18,450 or 500 sort of levels. Today, because of weakness in the US markets and some weakness in the Asian markets, we may see the levels of 18,000, maybe 250 or 200 on the downside, but that will be an opportunity for short-term traders to create some long positions, because in this market, especially if we go through with the 5-day simple moving average, then it is offering a very good support to the market. So whenever the market has fallen to 5 days support, 5 days simple moving average, we saw some recovery. And today also, after opening, I think the market should recover back. For the Bank Nifty, again, the similar sort of strategy. We should be buyer close to 43,300 with a target of 43,750.
Srikanth, what would your specific stock trades be?
Yeah, I would like to go with Axis Bank. After a very long time, the stock is managing to sustain above the mark of 890. It is forming some rounding bottom sort of formation if we see the daily chart, which is indicating us that the stock is heading for at least 950, 960 in the near term. But maybe in a day or 1 or 2 days of time, we may see the levels of 920.25. So Axis Bank is a buy at current levels. The other stock which we like is GSFC, Gujarat State Fertilizer, and most of these Gujarat PSUs, they are again started rebounding after hitting their important support levels. GSFC, which is currently trading around 175, 176, there we are expecting some 185, 190 sort of levels. At these levels, it's a buy with a stop loss around 170.
Okay.
Mitesh, what about you?
I have a mix of buys and sells. I think Shrikant just mentioned Gujarat-based stocks. I have GNFC on my list. Buy here with a stop at 609, targets of 650. NTPC is something which I think is getting into a stronger uptrend. So on a trading point of view, look at the first target of 186 and buy with a stop at 177. Couple of sell calls. L&T after a good rally gave a breakdown gap, so could see more profit looking. Sell here with a stop at 2265 for targets of 2190, and NMDC is a sell with a stop just above 110. Look for a pullback to about 104 levels.
Mitesh, just look up Sona BLW 1. I mean, this is so slight surprise. I mean, with the MSCI inclusion, Sona BLW is one, and the other is Max Health. Some were expecting, but not many, and there are large inflows expected in both these names. Sona BLW, of course, has run up quite a bit. I think about 100, 120 rupees in the last 1 month. But chartically, how are both looking?
Prashant, I'll start with Max Health. That's a stock, which I'm tracking. It's been, if you look at the last few months, it was doing a range of about 470 to about 430, 425. And now it's given an upside break. So typically, I think they should see a trading target of around 525, 530, and possibly, even 570. So good setup over here. I think that's a buy, and I would remain positive. Sona BLW, I've not been tracking it, but a quick look tells me that I think it's heading towards 500 plus kind of a levels. Short-term trend is positive, but again, I haven't worked on the levels in detail.
Okay. All right. Gentlemen, thanks for the calls. We will have to take a very quick break on that note. We'll come back on the other side. We'll, of course, have the pre-open rates, and we'll also be chatting with Mr. Murali Ramakrishnan, MD and CEO of South Indian Bank, talk about the Q4 performance and the outlook.